Welcome to today's episode of CU Career TV. My name is Erin Lewis. I am the Assistant Director of the Center for Career and Professional Development here at Clarion University. And tonight we're going to be talking about how to navigate those dining dilemmas. So with me today I have the Center's Associate Director, Diana Brush, and she's going to help us to figure out why in the world this topic is so important. So can you elaborate a little bit for us?
Sure, Erin. Dining etiquette can be very critical to career and job search success. Employers want to observe your conduct during meals and social situations, particularly for jobs that require a certain demeanor with the clients and superiors. So your table behavior is an opportunity for you to make a very good impression.
So when I arrive to either the restaurant or maybe the meeting facility, what are some of the things that I need to consider when I first arrive?
Well, when you first arrive, you want to see if there's a check-in table. And if there is a check-in table, see if there is a nameplate. If there's a nameplate, you take that nameplate and see if it's a table assignment. So you might be nameplate number one, your table number one, okay, Erin, and you take that and find table number one. If there is no check-in, if it's a cocktail period, you mix and mingle with folks, you take your clue from your host or hostess as to when you are to be seated. It's very important that if there are place cards already at the table, that you do not change those place cards. There's a reason the host or hostess has placed you at that particular table, and you don't want to have a dining disaster and do that type of a faux pas. So once you get to your table, you want to have your belongings, such as my purse here. We don't want anything sitting outside the chair or hanging on your chair. This could be hazardous to your host, your hostess, or any wait staff that are serving on you that evening. Cell phones, a no-no. They cannot be on the table. No matter what anyone else does, they should be placed somewhere away.
So I can't Instagram or Snapchat my food?
Well,
probably not good dining etiquette, right?
Yeah, not a job interview or a formal dining situation. But place it under your chair. If there's coat racks, place your coat in on the coat rack, or if there's a coat check it in. That's another hazard to wait staff. I was a waitress, I know. Also, if it's a type of a setting where there is not a name card, and you can just claim any seat. One of the major faux pas, dining don'ts, is to tip your chair up against that table. That's it's a tripping hazard if you tip your chair up against the table. So the proper way of holding your place is to take your napkin and just drape your napkin over the back of your chair, and that indicates that place has already been taken.
So that's helpful to certainly know when we go to a restaurant, or maybe we go to a wedding or a conference or other events, when we see those napkins on the back of the chair. Certainly, I think we've all been guilty of maybe putting our purse someplace that's less than dining etiquette. So what is the proper napkin placement? You know, sometimes we sit down and there's a napkin and everyone is seated. What do I do? I know that's very intimidating.
Well, you want to have good posture, plant your feet on the floor, cross your legs, and then take your napkin and place your napkin over your lap. If it's a big napkin, it can be folded in half. These are pretty nice sized napkins tonight. This one could be, no, we don't tuck the napkins in, Erin. No. And that's another tip at the end tonight. We'll talk about what types of food to order if you're on a job interview, dining situation. But sit up straight. You want to have good posture. Your hands and your wrists should either be on your lap or on the edge of the table. What we do not want to see is this or this, okay? That's a major no-no. So wrists, hands on your lap, sit up straight. And your elbows, should be like a book, like you're holding a book. Keep your elbows in, not not out. Okay?
A little too relaxed.
A little too relaxed for a formal business dining situation. So, navigating the napkin, we've placed it loosely, or it's placed on our lap. If it's extra large, I said fold it in half. You place it on your chair when you're leaving. So if you're going to leave, you get up and you place your napkin on your chair. I really don't know why. I just don't think that's the most sanitary thing, but it is proper etiquette. I will often place mine in the back of the chair. It's an etiquette rule I'd like to have changed, but it is proper for someone to have their napkin on their chair. And when you're done eating, it's rude to refold your napkin. It's a sign of disrespect. So the proper way of saying I'm done with my meal, I no longer need my napkin, is just to loosely fold it up and place it to the left of your plate.
You know, I've been known a time or two to be a little klutzy. If I drop my napkin, is it appropriate to ask for a replacement?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Definitely ask for a replacement if you drop your napkin.
Okay. So I know when I sit down at a table and you look at this, oftentimes, especially if it's a large table, maybe there's 8 or 9 place settings, how do I know which glass I should use?
Well, this is called your cover, what we see here in front of us. And in our case today, we're across from each other, but oh my gosh, many banquets and formal dining situations
Very
and
overwhelming.
weddings. Oh yes, they might have 10 people on a table that should maybe serve 6, so you're not sure, and it is definitely overwhelming. So the order in which you use, a good rule of thumb, is from the outside in. Think of the outside in.
Okay.
is what you're going to use for your silverware. Another little tip is think of making the letter B with your left hand and the letter D with your right hand. Okay? B, D. B is bread, D is drinks. So your bread plate is on the left, like that, okay. Or if you think fancy cars, BMW, fancy dinner. B, bread, M, main entree, and D, your drinks, okay? BMW, B or D. And I've been known to go and, and I'll see people under, don't do it out where everybody can see it, but under your table, just B, D, oh yeah, that's mine, okay? And glassware, so in our case we have a water glass here. It's perfectly okay to take a sip of water if there's already water on the table. If there are wine glasses and you're not drinking wine and you're of age, then you just put your hand over the wine glass to indicate that you do not want wine. Or the same if someone's coming with coffee or tea, just very politely.
When I was growing up, we would always pop our coffee cup upside down. Is that etiquette faux pas?
Some places that is customary, but it's just perfectly okay to just put your hand over, indicating that you don't want any. It depends on the facility. Take your cue from your host or your hostess. And let's see, I think if you are having a wine glass, you can pick the wine glass. Both white and red now can be picked up by the stem, but you can hold the red from the bowl of the wine glass. And that's because red wine is usually served at a warmer temperature, and your hand keeps that wine warm. However, if you did that with white wine, which is normally cold, you'd be warming that wine, and therefore the taste would not be as enjoyable.
I will add that if you're at a job interview and you are, even if everybody at your table is ordering wine or other liquor or booze or alcohol, please don't order alcohol at a job interview. Even if everybody else is doing it, you want to make sure that your senses are alert and everything is all up to par, so you can really perform your best. And they also might be testing you to see if you are willing to do that. So if you're at a wedding or something, a networking event, or out with colleagues, certainly okay if you're of age. But if you're at a job interview, alcohol is a huge no-no.
Thank you, Erin.
Yeah.
That's definitely the case. Just again, back at the table setting, we have on the outside in, and it's kind of a clue as to what your host or hostess is going to be serving. So in our case, you've got the knife and a larger spoon, a soup spoon. So that means, we must be having soup today. And on the left of the plate, we have a salad fork and an entree fork. So we must be having salad today. At the top of our plate would be our dessert silverware. So we have a spoon and a fork. So we are either having a choice of something that's with a spoon or something that we have an option of eating with a fork. And we have our bread plate, we've got our charger plate or our entree plate. Sometimes the charger plate is just there for decoration or to hold spills, and it may be removed after you have your salad or your soup. And in this case, we have our coffee cup and our water. So,
when I have been out at events, I've noticed that people seem to hold their fork and knife and put it differently. Is there a right and wrong way to hold our utensils?
Oh, actually, there's different styles.
Okay.
I wouldn't say there's a right or a wrong way, but a different style. And the Europeans have a different way of holding their silverware than North Americans, Canadians, and Americans. And the style that we use in America is normally sometimes referred to as a zigzag style. Actually, when I lived in Europe, it drove my family nuts that I ate the way I did, and they taught me the European style. They said we were just, there were actually a lot of traditions we'll talk about later about different cultures, but that's one thing you need to know is what is the style of your host or hostess. But I'm sure they would be fine with you eating the American style or the zigzag method. This came from the early 19th century when back before the 19th century, Europeans ate the same way we do, which is knife and fork, and we'll demonstrate that in just a moment. But around the 1850s, the upper class stopped shifting their forks back and forth and started the continental or European style of eating. This became very fashionable at the time. And there was a French etiquette book at the time that remarked, if you wish to eat in the latest mode favored by the fashionable people, you will not change your fork to your right hand after you have cut your meat, but raise it to your mouth in your left hand. So what we recommend that you do is hold your utensils like a pencil, okay? So what we do, American style, we hold it like a pencil. The fork is in your non-dominant hand, your knife is in your dominant hand. You're gonna cut about 3 slices at a time. 3, 2, 3. We're not sawing back and forth. Nope, just 3 slices. And then we switch our fork to our dominant hand to eat. And our knife can rest on our plate. Okay. When you spear the food, you spear it with the fork. You bring it tines up. And once again, your knife is resting, and that's how we eat. Okay? When you are not eating or you're between bites, we have what we call the resting stage for your silverware. So our American style is open, or actually that's European, American's open style. The doors, think about the doors being open, and whenever you're done eating, both pieces, I'm going to remove my salad bowl for just a second, and both utensils are, think of a clock, that would be like the 4 and the 10, or the 5 and the 11, and that's your resting. That means you're done. And that allows the waitstaff, a lot of this is just common courtesy, allows your waitstaff to pick up your plate and have your silverware, sometimes both pieces of silverware, so that it doesn't slide off your plate when they're removing it from the table.
So when I sit down and they start bringing food, and boy, oh boy, my stomach is growling, it looks so good. How do I know when I can begin to eat?
Okay, well, when it's time to eat, you will take that clue from your host, your hostess, the banquet program. So if you are at a banquet, check the program, check to see if there's an invocation or if there's a blessing. You would not want to start eating before you're given the prompt to do so. If there's not a host or a hostess and you're in a banquet table setting, you take your clue from your cue, excuse me, your cue could be a clue. You might have to try to figure it out yourself, but your cue would be from the most senior person at the table.
Okay.
Or the most prestigious person. They might be by age, and if it appears as though they don't know that they're in that situation, then you might be waiting a while until you see that others have begun. But always look at your host or your hostess or the head table. You would not want to start before them.
So are there any current trends in dining etiquette that we need to consider?
Actually, before we start with those current trends, how about if we go through some of the, because I'll get to that at dessert.
Okay.
Okay. If we go through eating.
Okay.
Some of the ways of
Okay.
eating some certain foods. So what we wanted to do was we waited until everyone was seated. We haven't started eating yet. But boy, oh boy, everybody's looking at those rolls and that wonderful bread, and they just can't wait to dig in.
It does look good.
So, if you would, the most senior person should start, but if it's closer to you, the person may say, and say I'm in the senior position, I will say, Erin, would you mind passing the bread? So when you pass the bread, always think about pass to the right. Right is right. I like little memory devices. So right is right, but you offer it to the person on your left first, then you can take yourself a piece of bread, and you might, yes, you can do that and place it on your, because we're actually going to show them how to butter the bread. And then it goes around to the right until it comes the whole way back. Okay, so we've got our bread, we have butter, place it back on the table, and there is a proper way of buttering bread and rolls.
Who knew?
Who knew? Okay, what everyone really wants to do, and oh, and by the way, if you have anything like a little butter dish or the sweet and low, things like that, always place it on the plate of the item in which you're enjoying at that time. So in this case with butter, we have bread. What's proper to do is to take a piece of bread, what you're going to eat, that's actually quite a bit right there, and if this were a roll, you only butter what you're going to eat at that time. So we're not slathering butter all over our big piece of bread. This time we're only going to put butter on what it is we're going to chew at that time. Okay?
So small bites, right?
Small bites. And if the butter were in a dish being passed around, you would take the butter out of that dish and take that portion and put it on your dish. And anytime you use silverware, once it's being used, it never goes back on the tablecloth. It goes either, in this case, if we might have a butter knife, this is our main course knife as well, so it can go on your bread plate, or I could have it, if I were enjoying my meal at this time, it would be on my plate.
Okay. What about, I see we have our salad bowl here. If there's dressings to pass, or maybe something like mayonnaise or other condiments or salt and pepper, are there rules for things like that as well?
Yes, those should be passed around, again, in the right, and people should be aware of what's there and not just reach for what they want, but you start the process the whole way around. So in this case, we have just one salad dressing here tonight.
Okay.
And we pass it with, and you let the person grab the little arm of that, okay? So you pass it to the right. It's almost like passing a knife if you were in Girl Scouts or Boy Scouts and you learn how to properly, you say, okay, before you let go, or else, be aware of your surroundings. We don't want any dining disasters, okay?
So when I sit down at the table, I really should be observant and take a look to see where's the bread, where's the dressing, where are things like the salt and pepper, so that if an item is near me, then I can certainly offer and pass, so that other people across the table may not be waiting all day for their bread, right?
Oh yes, and if you definitely have it's a mixture of wonderful little rolls in there, you might want to sit in front of the bread so you get to the first dish with the bread.
So if you get to choose your seat, look around as to where things are.
Okay, so once again with this, you offer to the left, serve yourself, and then pass to the right. Also, if someone asks for salt and pepper, do you ever hear the phrase that salt and pepper are married?
I have heard that before,
Okay.
that they are a pair. So even if I just ask for pepper, you're still going to pass me both, right?
Yes, you're still going to pass both. They stay together, even if you only want to use one or the other.
So you can impress all of your friends when you are at events, and when somebody asks for pepper or salt only, pass them both, and you can remind them that they are married so they don't get separated. You know, I definitely see this large spoon here with soup. I imagine soup is very tricky to eat in a formal setting. Is there a trick to navigating soup? Because I never order it when I'm out, or I always avoid it in formal events because I'm afraid that I'm going to have a disaster.
Okay, so let's say we've finished our salads and we've been served our soup. So there's a bowl of soup here for you, Erin.
Oh.
Very clear.
A very clear broth.
Okay. And yes, there is. Soup, your soup spoon. You think of a Ferris wheel. When you're on a Ferris wheel, right? Ferris wheel is away from you, goes away
Okay.
from you, right? So you spoon away from you. And so we're going to dip in at 12 o'clock, okay? And then you're right up at the edge of your bowl, you dip in at 12 o'clock, and if you have any drips, you've got that against your bowl. And then in from the side, yes, you can, little blow if it's
Okay.
warm, and you sip from the side. Okay, not from the tip, from the side. And that's what you do. And you really shouldn't hunker over. We're a little farther away here today, and that's simply it. Dip in at 12 o'clock, get your soup.
So now you
Right.
can all practice your Ferris wheel and see how slowly we have to eat our soup when we dip.
Oh, that's really good.
It's delightful. So when I'm done with my soup spoon, do I keep it in the bowl at the finished position?
If you were served your soup with a bowl or a charger underneath it, you can certainly place it on the plate. If there is no charger, at any time you rest your spoon or you're ready for it to be taken away, it should be inside of the bowl.
Okay. Are there any other tips for navigating the actual food? Is there anything that would be helpful for us to know?
Well, salads. We might just want to go back to our little salad bowl and see what tips we can say. As we said, the salad fork is on the left. In this case, we have a salad fork. When you cut your salad, you don't want to chop it all up at one time. Once again, think three, maybe
Okay.
like three small bites. I thought I had a tomato here for you, but not today. So something, if you have a salad fork, it has might have a sharp edge, and you can use the fork to cut your lettuce. If you have a cherry tomato, you want to put your fork over the tomato and then slice into it so that you can help keep it under control, those nasty things that like to fly out at you. Or so we don't want any of those designing disasters. We'll avoid that. Olives you can eat whole. One of the little tips, anything the way it comes in is the same way it goes out. So if you find that your olive actually has a pit, then it went in on your fork, it actually goes out on your fork. Okay.
It seems a little odd and kind of gross, but it definitely is okay etiquette to do that. You know, one of the things that when I was going on job interviews or meetings that require me to be in a very formal setting, I will often avoid the cherry tomato or avoid cutting it because I know I'm not really there to eat. I'm there to make an impression and there to interview. So if you are in a formal dining setting where you're interviewing, those really challenging foods, you may want to just consider not eating them or avoiding them altogether so you don't have a disaster. Nothing will be more embarrassing than trying to cut your cherry tomato and having it actually pop across the table at the person who's you're trying to impress and maybe in a hiring position. So those are some things I've always found to be really helpful along the way. So let's talk a little bit about those current trends. Things always seem to be changing, and it's really hard to stay up. Like, these are some very basic tips, but I know that the last time I went to a wedding, there were definitely some trendy desserts. How do we handle those situations?
Sure. Well, it just so happens that we have desserts here today. So if you don't mind removing, let's just assume we've finished our meal. And we can still have the charger plate here if you'd like.
Okay.
But, so
These cupcakes look amazing.
one of the latest trends is cupcakes as a
Yes.
formal dessert.
Yes.
At weddings, at formal dinners, and there are different ways to eat a cupcake. If you're ever unsure of anything, of what do I do, how do I eat this, when should I do this, always watch your host or hostess or that most senior person at the table. Take your cue from them. In the case of cupcakes, if we did not see a fork here, then we could, like I said, take the cue. There's 3 different ways. Yes, you can still eat it. In this case, these are very nice, neat cupcakes, and it's not going to be too messy. So you can just eat it the normal way you would eat a cupcake. However, the latest trend is you cut off the bottom third.
I have a cupcake that doesn't seem to want to open.
Okay, and then you make it like a sandwich. So if you saw that there was a fork and knife that was served with, and that's what your hostess is doing, so at the cupcakes, I'd always wait to see, are they eating with a fork and a knife, or is it considered a finger food? And you would eat it like a sandwich. And if it's messy, if this is like the icing's coming out like this one, certainly feel free to take, you just don't want to make a mess. You always want to be considered courteous and just eat it as you would a sandwich. And that's perfectly acceptable today. That's the newest trend out there. The other trends are banquets.
Okay.
Okay. But while we've had your cupcake, you may have had coffee or tea service passed around.
Yes.
Okay. And once again, think of passing if the creamer and the sugar are closest to you, please pass those. Point the end closest to the handle closest to the person who's going to get that. So pass those around as well. Be cognizant that even though you may not want coffee or tea, someone else might want that as well.
Right.
Okay.
Are there other trends, as what you mentioned, like the banquet, like the buffet? Yes. How do we navigate that?
Okay. Yeah. So let's move that. Let's talk about that. That's been around quite a few years now. That banquets are much more popular, and so I'm sorry, not banquets, buffets. Buffets, serving a buffet rather than a sit-down meal. So with a buffet, we want you to be prepared. Take a look before there. You want to have an approach the buffet. So if you're the type of person that's indecisive, or you might have some eating, some dietary limitations or considerations, then scout the buffet. It's okay when you get there. Take a look at it, see what's there. Will there be 1 line or 2 lines? Don't go to the buffet until it's your turn, or when your table is called. Okay, so there will be someone who will be letting you know when it's time for you to go to the buffet. The other thing you want to keep in mind is that always start yourself at one end. After your table's been called, you go to the end. Do not cut in the middle. If you forget something, if you want to go back for something, it really is best to wait until everyone's gone through the line before you go back, unless it's like silverware.
Right.
That's a common thing that people it's now on a buffet, not at your table. You're like, where? I forgot my silverware. So don't cut the line. When you're serving yourself, look at where the serving utensils are. Do the utensils go back in the buffet?
Is there a plate? Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
Or is there a plate for that? If someone else is serving, then you don't have to worry about that. But do not mix utensils. That could cause a problem if someone has a dietary consideration, an allergy, if you're mixing the beans in with the potatoes, let's say. And don't do any taste tests at the buffet. I know it can be tempting. You see that there and it's like, oh, I don't know if I like this. You take a little bit of something. If you don't like it, you don't eat it. If you do like it, when it's time to go back for seconds, and there will be an opportunity to go back for seconds, you can go for more. Should you go back for seconds, health regulations require that you have a new plate each time that you go back. And the wait staff are aware of this. They will be removing
yeah, I know sometimes
plates.
it can really seem like, gosh, you know, it's going to make a lot of dishes, or it's really going to cause a lot of problems. But you know, restaurants, buffets, all of those things, you really have to have a second plate. So really be mindful of that. So thank you for sharing that tip.
And always be grateful, thank the wait staff. That's one thing that I really think is so important. If you've never been a server, it really does mean an awful lot to the wait staff when you say thank you.
Right, there's, you know, kindness definitely is something that a lot of employers look for. So they look to see how you interact with the wait staff and how you interact with the other members of the dining party. So always use your manners, you know, please, thank you. All of those things are really good to showcase who you are. What if I sit down at my meal and it is just the best food I've ever had, and I'm really full though? I cannot possibly eat another delicious bite. Is it okay for me to ask for a to-go container?
Well, doggy bags, don't ask, but don't refuse.
Okay.
That's our rule. So if you have leftovers, you do not ask for a takeover container, but if your host or hostess has provided containers and wants you to take, then you'd be insulting them if you refuse to take food home.
Well, that's good to know, because that's always a tricky thing to navigate. You never know what position to put yourself in. Are there any other tips that we should take into consideration? This is definitely a lot of information. I'm sure our viewers are going to find this really helpful, but are there any last-minute closing tips that you think would be helpful for our viewers to know?
Sure. I know it's tempting to share food with someone, so if you want to share an entree, that's fine, and you can tell the wait staff, we're going to share this entree, or we're going to share this appetizer, and they will bring extra plates for you. But do not share food from your plate.
Just a bite.
Not a bite. You know, I know we've seen that on TV, and it was with us in Lady and the Tramp, where they're sharing the spaghetti. But that is something we do not want to do, is share each food that's on your plate. But
and
they can make accommodations for sharing. And if everyone in your group says, oh, let's order a variety and we'll share, and then the wait staff, once again, will provide you with extra plates.
And I think that's also a new trend. Some of the restaurants that we're going to, is that tapas style, where it's designed to serve multiple people with one entree. But you know, if you're out with friends and you just want to try a bite, you know, that's fine. You can do that among friends. What we're really talking about here is in a formal setting where maybe you have to impress others with your skill sets and impress others with what you have to offer as far as a job interview might go. So that's when you really want to follow these rules. If you're just having dinner with your friends at home, or you're home with mom and dad, however you eat at home, eat how you eat and share food, and by all means have fun and enjoy your dining experience. These tips are really designed for a more formal setting. So just wanted to preface that. But are there any other closing tips that we need to consider?
If you do your research before you do a job interview, or you go to a family, if you know that there's a cultural difference that you need to be aware of, go online, do some research on their dining etiquette. As I said, in France, it was not proper to have your hands under the table.
Oh,
that came from, you could have had a weapon back in times. So in France, that's why the knife is pointed in this direction, the edge. You know, there are certain things that come from back when you might be dining with someone who
follows us.
The dinner with that evening. But hands, you know, it's in France, your hands are not to be up here; they were to be on here. Does the culture want you to clean your plate?
Oh yes.
I mean, my Italian family, you're cleaning the plate with your bread.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
I mean, that's okay in Italy. Are noises okay? There are some Asian countries where it shows that you enjoy it by slurping or making noises when you enjoy your soup, or eating your soup out of a bowl, where that's a no-no in American etiquette. And also do research if you're doing a business interview, lunch, if you're on a trip. Check out the menu before you go. so that you are decisive,
Right.
and also you know the prices, and you take your clues from your host as to whether or not you should order 2 courses or 3 courses. And keep in mind that you don't want to eat or wear what you eat.
Right.
So look at the menu, and if they're taking you to Italian, see if there's something other than spaghetti. We didn't cover tips for challenging foods tonight. That's another show in itself.
Right.
But think about what's easy to eat while you're asking questions, what won't get stuck in your teeth, and
Spilled on the front of your shirt. Right.
And
Okay.
you don't want lobster at that time. You know. So try to find a moderately priced item. You don't want to order the most expensive. Sometimes you'll go to a restaurant where they won't have the prices
Right.
there for you on that. In that case, you just order what you order, and you're lucky if you're going to a restaurant that doesn't have the prices on the menu. Enjoy. And then last, I would say the most important thing is to thank your host or hostess. If it is a business dining trip, or if someone's invited you over to their house for a formal setting, send a thank you note within a couple of days of your visit.
Right, so back to those please and thank yous, those words and manners. So thank you so much, Diana. These tips, I'm sure, are going to be very helpful for our viewers in their dining situations so that they can navigate like a pro and be very polished and professional. As always, if there's something here that you would like to delve into a little more deeply, you are welcome to schedule an appointment with one of our career counselors or check us out online at clarion.edu/career.